So thanks very much. Welcome to Every Mind Matters by myself, Mikey Doak, and joined today by Ali Carson. She's been through quite a lot in her life, so she has. So Ali, thanks very much for coming on. I appreciate it, and I appreciate you getting in contact with the page. So I do.
Thank you so much for having me. It's lovely to meet you.
Good to see you. Good to see you. How's the family? Everyone all good?
Yeah, we're all good. Coming out of lockdown, it's been odd because we all live kind of close together but haven't been able to see each other. So it's nice just having actual face-to-face contact with people again. I know obviously this is virtual, but it's nice being able to see them in person and give them a hug. And it's completely different to talking to them online. So it's been lovely the past couple of weeks.
No, that's good. It's good things are lifting up as well. So the restrictions are getting a bit easier. And also the summer's coming in nicely as well. So that's good. But no, basically this channel, I've decided obviously to make this channel just to try and break this horrible stigma that's affecting every single family in society just now at the moment, especially with everything going on. As I said in my introduction video, it was to do with obviously the coronavirus pandemic, but I think the real pandemic is people's mental health, and there's been a lot of tragedies recently, so there is regarding that, and people of young ages as well, they feel as if they can't talk. So just basically this page just I'm trying to get everyone to open up as much as they possibly can, if they feel comfortable talking to myself, or I can put them in contact with someone if I feel as if anything's, maybe if they feel as if they're in danger. But I put in the numbers for like Samaritans and NHS on my Instagram page. I put that on yesterday, so if anyone needs that, just go to my Instagram page, Every Mind Matters MD it is, and the YouTube link is in the bio as well, or Ali as you're usually called by everyone. So tell me a bit about your story growing up.
So I mean, I don't like to say like I got picked on really badly in school, because I mean I feel as if everyone gets a wee bit of teasing and stuff like that when you're in primary, but I took it quite hard. So I used to get picked on quite badly by boys in the school, and I was always really tall, and like I kind of stood out. And even now, like I'm like totally still into glitter and unicorns and all of that. So like I've always been quite eccentric, and I think people kind of took that as an opportunity to make digs, and I never really took the criticism very well, and it never gave me like a thick skin or anything like that. It just kind of broke me down, and that kind of continued into high school. As I said, I know people have had way worse experiences with bullying than what I have, so it's definitely not something that I would say is like it. Obviously it shaped me in my formative years, but it's not something that I carry with me, and definitely the bullying wasn't the worst part of it. But I did struggle. My family are separated, so like my mum and dad, I struggled kind of being like a suitcase kid between houses, and having kind of like struggles with that internally. And I've always had both really supportive families, and I'm very, very grateful for that. Like I've had a lovely family unit at my mum's and also at my dad's, and I've never really missed out on that kind of like family unit lifestyle. I was really lucky to have that, but I think it took its toll on me because I hadn't really experienced that typical family home, and I didn't really understand when people said, like I remember once actually I was in school and someone said, oh, your mum and dad aren't together, and I was like, no, and I just kind of thought, well, is other people's mum and dads together? Like, and it was that when it's kind of I realised that I was different. But going through school, I struggled really, really badly with self-esteem issues. I still do, but I'm definitely I'm more aware of it as an adult. And I haven't always struggled with my weight. My weight has not been like a kind of massive factor, but I developed body dysmorphia and an eating disorder. And as much as, I mean, people know when you have an eating disorder, like it doesn't matter your weight. Your weight doesn't matter. Like it's all about just being thinner. And it doesn't matter how much you weigh. You could weigh like at one point, I'm very tall, obviously you can't see me sitting down, but I'm like 5'7", 5'8", and I was severely underweight, so much so that people were like talking about it in school. But that's kind of where all my mental health kind of took a kind of downward spiral, was with the start of that. But I did get bullied for being chubby when I was younger, and I wasn't, like, looking back, I totally wasn't. I just got a round face. So I think it kind of all stemmed from that. And as I grew up, and obviously as you get to like being kind of in your early teens, when everyone starts to kind of struggle, like we all get a bit spotty and like a bit awkward. And it really, really took a downwards turn from there. And that's when I started to get kind of depression and anxiety, and it ended up like I was self-harming at one point as well, which I'm happy to touch upon. But it kind of initially, when I think back, started probably from me having digs made about my weight, and then me kind of having that eating disorder and going from there. So that was a long-winded answer to your question.
No worries. It's good you're raising, obviously, concern, because I think you touch on the bullying, that's still a big problem in society today. And I don't think the bullies realise what they're doing when they're bullying like people like yourself, the impact it could have later on in life on you or at that time. Just touching on the bullying again, when that started from a young age, did you tell anyone right away, or did you keep it to yourself?
I've always been quite an open book when it comes to like telling like how I feel and what I'm thinking about and stuff, but I definitely did internalise it quite a lot. So I think because there was a girl in school that I was with, and I'm not saying that I didn't, like, I probably called her names and I wasn't as nice to her as what I should have done, and eventually, like, as I got older and we went into kind of like primary school at the latter years, we did start to become friends. But I think because there was a couple of people that got picked on worse than me, I was kind of like, oh, well, it's fine. But as you become an adult, obviously you realise that just because someone's got it worse off, it doesn't mean that your problems don't matter, and that someone's allowed to treat you in a way that you're not comfortable with. So I think I internalised it quite a lot, and then eventually it did start to get really, really bad. It's actually, I got picked on really, really badly by a footballer. I'm not going to say who it is, but he was really, really awful to me, and used to, like, he was quite violent towards me and used to trip me up and make sure I hurt myself. And when it started getting to that, it was kind of like my parents noticed, so they would notice that I had like scrapes on me, and I would come home, like, I'd be really upset and I wouldn't want to talk to anyone, and they kind of prodded me and kind of found out what was going on from there. And it was brought up with the school, and my school were luckily very helpful, but the boy was like a golden child that was doing it, so it was never really dealt with the way it should have been. I also had a lot of neurodiverse conditions in school as well, so now it's recognised as obviously being autistic and having ADHD, but at the time I think that played a massive part in me internalising it as well, because I kind of thought there was something wrong with me, and that's why it was picking on me. But yeah, I know my experience would have been different, I think, had there not been someone else that was taking the brunt of the bullying from him, which is obviously awful for that person. But yeah, it made my life slightly different.
Definitely. And as you say, was it like a group of people bullying you, or was it one person in particular that was, you mentioned, you touched on a footballer?
Yeah, I mean, there was I feel as if with any kind of bullying group or any like group in school of friends, there's always like a ringleader. Yeah, so definitely. He was absolutely the ringleader, and I mean, he's really popular now, so like he is. He's still that person, but I imagine now he's grown up and he's like a nice person. Like, I think it was genuinely just like kind of daft teasing, but you really don't understand as a child what kind of impact that really has on someone. So as I said, that started off me having an eating disorder, when really all he was meaning is I was a bit weird. So like, I think with that, he probably didn't intend to do as much harm as what he did. But I never really stood up for myself, so I just kind of let it happen. And then when I did stand up for myself, they sometimes, obviously, you worry that makes it worse, and it made it worse. And then all of his friends kind of like ganged up on me with it. And as a group of boys with one like little girl who's quite timid, it's not, it just escalated.
They probably saw you as the easy target then. Yeah. If everyone, well, they wouldn't have done it, even though there was a group of them, they probably wouldn't have done it if it was like a boy similar height to them and similar.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's the thing you touched on. Obviously, your school didn't deal with it as properly. I still feel as if that's an issue when I was at school as well. Like, I feel as if the more like popular boys are like the ones that like are like going to be brilliant when they're older. And I feel as if they get treated differently a wee bit. And I think that's what I'm trying to do here. Everyone's the same. Everyone's got their own mental health, and everyone should be treated the same. So because it's just a problem still in society these days with people getting treated differently. Like, and I think it's also different now. You can't really give kids into the trouble like you used to years ago. Like, you can't hit them with a belt or stuff like that. I didn't get that. Also, I'm not that old yet.
I'm glad that there's no belting, but yeah, I get what you mean. It's, oh my goodness, that's someone's having a drag race outside, I think. But yeah, they dealt with it in a way that was fine, and yeah, they addressed that I was getting picked on, and at the time as well, I don't think they realised how bad it was and how much it was actually affecting me as a child in their formative years, like under 9 years old. Do you know what I mean? That's what forms your personality. And I was already having quite a tough time, not at home, not necessarily like at home or from my family, but just having that separated experience. And as I said, my family were really supportive. It was never that, but I think I was already kind of trying to process I had a little brother that was just born, and I was processing how I was suddenly a big sister and life had changed and things. So yeah, I think there definitely could have been a lot more done, but it was actually way worse, the school that I was at high school, and how they dealt with my mental health issues, because at that point it was raised properly and it wasn't dealt with. So yeah, I would say primary wise, yeah, they definitely could have dealt with it better, but I think I didn't really articulate it well enough. And now obviously I think teachers are a bit more vigilant towards it, and they just maybe weren't at the time.
Oh, definitely. And see, in that time, when you were growing up and getting bullied, and what age were you when your parents split up? Was that your age as well?
Oh yeah, I actually don't ever really remember them being together, so it was never that was the issue. Yeah, I was very lucky to have a stepdad and a stepmum, and they were in my life since I was a baby. Like, pretty much they split up, and then within the next couple of years they were both in long-term relationships. So I was actually really lucky. I had two like kind of family units, which was really nice. So I don't remember them being together, and that was never the issue. The issue was just kind of like they traveling about, and it being they had different parenting styles, so it was quite confusing as a child. And I was I would say like the bullying kind of started when I was about 6 or 7. So obviously that's still very, very young, and that's when you're kind of like starting to understand things as well. I think once you get to about like, I'm saying like primary 2, primary 3 is when you understand that maybe it is a bit different and your home life is different to other people's. So that's kind of when I started to notice anyway.
Definitely, Ali. I think as well, in this generation especially, I think like teachers should be getting like kind of trained, like more mental health training, because like the impact bullying's having on kids later on in life. Like, you have people like the other day I was reading about a boy, I think he was only 18, killed himself because he's grown up basically, and he was getting bullied every day from a kid, and it eventually took his toll on him. So I think touching like I think teachers do need like some sort of training on that, like mental health first aid, and kind of like they need to understand that. I feel more like, don't get it wrong, like my teachers,
some of them, I know they deal with it really well, but I think obviously I'm not a teacher, so I can't say. I know my mum is a teacher, and she is mental health first aid trained, so it is becoming more common now, but I mean the damage is already done for like people our age, you know, so yeah, I'm glad that obviously it's been put into place a bit more often now, but there's still so much I think can be done. And like, I only left school, as much as it seems ages ago now when I say it out loud, I only left school 7 years ago. So I'm only 24, and my kind of worst mental health period was when I was in school. And I also know one of my best friends, she definitely won't mind me sharing this, but she left school because her mental health was so bad, and they basically told her not to bother coming back because there was nothing they could do to help her. So I think in high school there's definitely not as much done as what could be. And there was quite a few times when I was in high school, I was suicidal, and I wrote about it in like my English diaries, and I would write about literal like physical abuse that was happening to me, and nothing was done. And these kind of stories, I've shared them online, and I would be happy to share them as well with you. But it's very obvious that it's from a first-hand perspective. There's no way someone would be able to describe something like that. And with that, that's kind of what struck me as an adult now, looking back, that nothing was done about that. And it was very clear that I was in an unsafe situation. So that I'm a bit not like resentful for it, but I just wish there had been more done at the time for that, because I think that could really have changed the course of like how my life has turned out, and how I've become unwell, and how I've kind of battled with it throughout as well. So yeah, I would say probably like latter end of high school is when it really started to take its toll on me.
Started getting bad, and you mentioned with the suicide notes in school. Was that all the way throughout school, or was that near the end before you left school?
So basically, I'm sharing all my business. I started going out with a boy when I was like 16, like 5th year, I think I was in. And the relationship was horrible. It was really toxic, and I'd probably played a part in that as well. But the way that I was made to feel in that relationship was so awful that it ended up becoming like totally detrimental to my mental health. I was on Tumblr at the time looking at like pro-Anna pages, which was awful. Like I remember reading a quote and thinking, that's exactly how I feel, and it was, I want people to talk about how skinny I've gotten. And now saying that back, like it puts a lump in my throat, because I'm like, I just can't believe that that's the kind of attention I wanted. I wanted people to ask me like, are you okay? Because I clearly wasn't getting the help elsewhere. But it all kind of stemmed from there, and I was self-harming pretty badly. Like it was visible to other people around me, and there is such a stigma that people noticed. Like I wanted people to see it, I wanted people to ask me if I was all right, and they just didn't. Like my close friends were definitely aware of it, and they were kind of involved, and I was just lucky to have that group. But there's teachers that noticed it. There was at one point someone kind of asked me like, are you okay, like what's going on? And that then obviously you kind of shut down, you're like, oh no, someone has noticed, and then you kind of get like awkward about it. But at that point it was really, really bad, so much so that I had a massive 16th birthday party, and people watching this will totally remember it, because it was literally like the party of the year. It was ridiculous planning. I had like put up billboards around Clydebank and everything, and it was honest, it was so extra. It was like literally my super sweet 16. And I remember thinking that I was going to end my life after that party. So like that whole time I made such a big deal about the party, and everyone thought like, obviously I'm just like a princess or whatever, but I was just making a big deal. But the reason I was making a big deal is because I had planned on ending my life after it, and I wanted it to be a big kind of celebration of my life before I killed myself. So now, like looking back at that, and people probably hearing that, they'd be like, I can't even believe that I was part of that and didn't notice what was going on. But I feel as if to me it was quite obvious, but obviously it wasn't.
Definitely. No, and that's the thing, like people don't notice. People think you're the happiest girl on the planet. You've got the billboards and probably security guards protecting, making sure no the night mate and stuff like that. That, as you say, like people probably be shocked hearing that just now. Looking back, they just thought you wanted like a big massive Ferrari. Didn't think it was going to be your last one. And that's touching on the self-harm. When that started, did you tell anyone right away about it, like, or did you not have to really at all?
I mean, at first I used like things that I knew wouldn't really hurt me, a bit like I think what people maybe that are watching this don't understand, like self-harm for me, what it was is a way to channel my emotional pain into physical pain, and it made it easier to deal with. So people often, I know I was one of those people that was kind of like, well, why would you hurt yourself? Like, why would you ever want to do that? And that was sometimes the reaction that still even now you get from people when you explain it. But so I was doing it in a way that I knew I wouldn't really damage myself, but I still get that kind of relief from being in pain. And I was doing it on the top of my thighs so that people wouldn't see it. And then when things got really, really bad, I started to do up my arms, so that people would notice and people would hopefully ask me and I could try and get some help, but it never really worked out that way. But my family noticed, but my mum was really aware of it. She took away like anything sharp, which, I mean, props to her. She dealt with so much over that period of time, and really more than you would expect as a parent to deal with, like I know everyone wants to keep their child alive, but she literally was on suicide watch with me constantly. It took away, like, I remember at one point she took away the like your leg razors and stuff, and I was like pleading with her, and she would sit in with me so that I could shave my legs, and like she knew I wasn't going to hurt myself, because it got to that stage that she was literally worried every time that I was left alone that I was going to do something. And quite often it happened when I was at my dad's, because he kind of did leave me to my own devices. I think he was just unaware of what was going on. But that's kind of when most of my self-harming happened, because I was a bit more isolated. It's not his fault, but that's kind of like where I started to do it more, because I knew I could get away with it that way. It's like an addiction with self-harming. Like I've been very lucky to never have an addiction to anything, but I can imagine like you crave to do it. And I remember like going home and like getting excited that I would be able to do it, and I finally wouldn't have to like be as upset as what I was. So and I realise I'm saying this like quite emotionless, but I have to say it that way because it is. I have to kind of count it as fact. But yeah, I think it was obvious to the people around me that I was doing it, and I did initially start doing it secretly, but it kind of spiraled out of control by the end of it.
I appreciate you, Ali, obviously very open about that, because that must be difficult talking about it still to this day, even though it happened a wee while ago. But did you feel like you felt that was a release, the self-harm, like you felt as if you were releasing the pain? Did it carry on to any family members? Did they start to feel a bit like suffer from it because of what was happening with yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my mum really did take the brunt of it. At one point, for a long time, like probably about maybe a year, I was sleeping in my mum's bed with her, because I was like a shell of a human being. And seeing anyone you love, never mind your child, like that, like she knew that I wanted to kill myself, and I didn't have to say it. I think I probably did at some point, but I didn't have to tell her, because she was very aware I didn't want to be alive. And I went to school every day. I would sit in my class, and sometimes I would just cry in class because I was so depressed. And obviously that kind of alienated myself from my friends in that sense as well, because they were just like, we didn't know what to do. They're only children. Like, I was 16, and I know you're an adult at 16, but you're not, you're a child. Like, and I was trying to process it myself by saying, I need the help, but I don't want to go on medication, and I don't think counselling's going to work for me, and like just kind of making up my own mind about these things. And I think the more my mum watched me kind of like spiral out of control, and she saw me just sitting crying, there was at one point I would burst into like angry episodes as well, because anyone that kind of has depression or has struggled with that will know, like, you're literally just trying not to fall apart constantly. So the littlest of things can really send you over the edge. Like, at one point, I think my stepdad, he brought in a can of juice, and it was like the wrong juice, and I started like hysterically screaming. And I think being around someone like that as well, when I was quite volatile is not the right word, but she was kind of walking on eggshells around me, because she was basically just trying to get me to stay alive. And there was no like kind of finish line. There was no like, oh, if this then this. She just kind of wanted to keep me alive, and I don't think she ever thought that I would still be here now. So I think definitely she kind of went through a grieving process with me. It's probably the best way to describe it, and it definitely impacted her mental health. But I know she didn't really share that with me, because obviously that would absolutely, if I'd have known it had affected her in that way, it would have been enough to send me over the edge. So I think she done a really good job of looking after herself and me, even though it maybe it made her mental health a lot worse as well. So yeah, I'm very grateful for how she dealt with it, and she was probably, out of everyone that supported me. She was the one that kept me alive, and she absolutely knows that as well. So I think if it wasn't for her, it would be completely different.
A big shout out to your mum for basically.
Shout out to Helen.
Yeah, shout out Helen for letting you be here, telling you your story. But touching on like that, like no parent should ever think about having to bury their child at all in society. I remember when we spoke the other day, you said recently you had an accident that's really impacted your life.
Yeah, so first of all, just a bit of backstory. So I have epilepsy. My epilepsy was caused by a head trauma that was, it's pure not funny, but it's funny. I was doing the cha-cha slides, and it goes, how low can you go? I cracked my head off the marble floor, knocked myself unconscious, and gave myself epilepsy. So I had a massive health struggle. I actually have a YouTube video. It's way too long to explain to you or anyone else here, because it's like years of my life. But if any of you guys want to watch that, it's on my YouTube channel, and we can link it or whatever.
I'll put that in the link.
So that was a massive health struggle, and at that point as well, that's where my mental health started to dip again. So at one point, basically the doctor told me I was making it up, and it was total the whole way through. It was medical gaslighting, and that's completely another issue. But the way I was made to feel when I was getting diagnosed with epilepsy, and I ended up, I had glandular fever. I was really, really sick. I just didn't want to be here. Like, it got to that stage again that I was like, oh well, I mean, if I can make it to this state, then I'll probably just kill myself after that. And that was the mental state that I was in constantly. So again, like, these kind of feelings and stuff, they creep up again. So I think that's something to bear in mind as well. Like, absolutely, my advice to anyone is that it does get better. Your mental health will get better if you persevere and you stay here. But there's always going to be, it's a battle. You're always going to have to deal with it and keep yourself healthy. So I think that's something that is quite prominent in my life now anyway. And basically, after all this like medical trauma and all of that, I was diagnosed with epilepsy. I was treated for epilepsy, and then I had a really, really bad experience on a medication for epilepsy, and it sent me into like a psychosis. It was the medicine induced that, so it wasn't actually to do with my mental health. It was like medical induced. And I tried to cut my finger off. I was trying to jump in front of buses, and it was really, really bad. It got to the stage, it's called Keppra poisoning, is like the kind of like loose term for it. And essentially they prescribed me with so much my body couldn't cope, and it was being poisoned. So I got quickly taken off of that, and after that I started to feel better. Like, my epilepsy was in a really good place. I wasn't having seizures anymore, and it was looking good. Like, I was living my life and going on holiday and going out, and I wasn't feeling really low. I wasn't having these like periods of depression or like really anxiety. I was like chill. I was good. And then at the start of the pandemic, I took quite ill. My immune system's never been very good since I became epileptic, and I had that kind of glandular fever. But I took very, very ill in February last year, so February 2020. And it was absolutely COVID. Like, there's no doubt about it. It was COVID. At the time, I'd been in touch with someone that had been in China. They had told me on the NHS, it's just before we knew about it, so there were hard feelings, but they told me like, oh no, you won't get sick, you won't have COVID if they don't have symptoms. So now we obviously know that's rubbish. But I was floored. I was so ill. Never in my life have I felt as ill as what I did then. Like, at one point when I was going through the epilepsy diagnosis, and I was really ill, I thought I was passing away. Like, I was like, I'm dying, this is it. Like, this is how people must feel when they're like going into the light. I was like, this is me, my health journey's over. And I felt worse with COVID than what I did for that, right? So it was so severe. And after it, I never really recovered. So I had ME, so like post viral malaise is kind of what they call it.
Yeah.
And it's quite commonly called chronic fatigue syndrome. It's very, very similar. And likely it is that I've had that the whole time and it's just went into flare-ups when I've took ill. And then with lockdown, my mental health totally plummeted at the start of it. I think we all were. We were all kind of like, oh, 2 weeks in the house, like how exciting. And I was getting to work from home. I was like, yes, like this is brilliant. I love working from home. I'll have a drink every night, like great. And then we never came out of lockdown, and I got told my illness was really bad, like whatever was wrong with me. I had to go on antibiotics. I got a really bad kidney infection that went septic and I almost died. Like this was all within like February to like May roughly. And I went into shielding. So anyone that's been shielding, literally you're totally isolated from everyone. At the point, I think people forget as well with the lockdown, we went into a fight or flight situation. So many people, obviously there's people that's not followed the rules, there's people that's broken lockdown rules and all of that, but I'm talking about the majority of the population went into survival mode.
Yep.
And being in survival mode for a year and a half is detrimental to people's mental health. Like there's no two ways about it. It's think about when you leave the house, you'll catch something and you'll die. Like that's drummed into you. So that I took that like really, really seriously. And I remember thinking, and it's made me so emotional even saying it, like I just remember watching Boris Johnson saying people are going to lose loved ones, and I thought, I can't lose loved ones, I can't do it, I've managed to make it this far, I'm not going to lose them. So I just shut everyone out and didn't speak to anyone. And people were like, do you want to go a walk? I was like, no, I don't want to go a walk, I don't want to see you, I don't want to go out the house. And like my family came to visit me. My mum, she lived on her own, so it was really useful that I got to see her. And honestly, if I hadn't have been for being able to see her, I think I would have been in a way worse state than what I'm now. But we didn't go to the shops. We were getting our shopping delivered. I wasn't going out to work. My boyfriend's not going out to work. And all through this, I'm still battling with being unwell.
Yeah.
There was a lot of pressure from work because of the job that I do. It's not my work's fault. It's not anything to do with them. It's just a high pressure job. And the job that I was doing at the time was kind of like this. It's customer facing though, and I was getting a lot of abuse on streams. So that kind of took me back to that bullying, and it was I had a lot of people saying like, you're fat and you're ugly and you need to do this, and like you're useless, and just horrible. Like it's just trolls, and people say, oh, don't listen to trolls, it's just a reflection of them. But if someone tells you you're horrible and you're ugly and you're worthless and I should go and kill myself over and over and over again, you believe it. Like people are human. You can't take abuse from someone constantly and not start to doubt yourself. Or if you don't start to doubt yourself, there's something wrong with you. Do you know what I mean? Like that anyone would. So at that point then I got that really bad infection, and after that, with the shielding, it was just too much. My boyfriend wanted to see his family, and I was really not comfortable with this at all because they were out working, and to be honest with you, not really following the rules. So I was a bit wary of this and I didn't want to go. And we went out to the park. There had been a whole big drama about going there, and I mean, now it sure doesn't matter, but we got there and I had a massive seizure. So I'd been seizure free for like 3.5 years or round about that. And I had this seizure that was like basically it looked like a psychotic break to anyone watching. So I don't remember it, but I've been told obviously what it looked like. And I started shouting. I was screaming that people were trying to kill me. I was hysterical. And all I remember from that now, like if I think about it, is just like the trees and like not like just screaming and people shouting at me. So
basically,
basically my body's tried to blank it out because it's traumatic. But that whole situation has caused a massive rift with the family, and I mean, that's another story. But basically, I was accused of faking this seizure. Why anyone would want to fake a seizure, I don't know. Like, I've not won in this situation at all. And essentially, that whole seizure, caused by the stress of the pandemic, not being able to see people, being in lockdown, being unwell, it triggered so many different illnesses. So my body essentially went mental and started sending like random autoimmune responses to things. So now I have fibromyalgia, FND, which is functional neurological disorder. I've got CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome. I have POTS, which is something wrong with my heart. The paramedics were called out for that because they thought I was having a heart attack, and it was an anxiety attack. And it's just went, like, every so often I go to the doctor and she diagnoses me with something else. But it was basically all caused by a massive amount of stress. Not talking about my mental health, and then, like, it coming out one way or another. So I think because everyone was like, oh, well, I mean, everyone's going through it. It's the pandemic. Everyone's struggling. Everyone's having a hard time. I kind of adopted that mindset and was like, well, if everyone's struggling, it doesn't really matter. And then it obviously kind of came to a head as a massive seizure. So that's kind of the trauma. Like, it wasn't like physical trauma, but it was total mental torture. And also being told that you've made it up as well is just like horrendous. And from there, my mental health just like totally plummeted again. So yeah, that's my lockdown story.
You've been through a lot, like, especially just in the last year and a half, and you mentioned the shielding. Obviously, that must have been very difficult. I've got close family members that are like in the vulnerable category, and they're having to shield, and like they stay on their own as well. And I was talking to one of the followers of the page last night, actually. He's a delivery driver for Asda, and he feels like he makes people's days, like, because he delivers a lot of shopping just now to people that are shielding, like, and he feels as if, like, it doesn't matter if it takes 2 hours to chat with him, as long as he makes their day, especially just now, because you're hearing about, like, elderly people dying just now, and they're on their own, they've not got that support, and it must have been hard, especially for you at such a young age as well. Like, I'd have been the same, like, if your medical conditions, if you've been told, obviously, by the government, you're going to lose loved ones due to this, and you were hearing stories as well, if you've got a condition and you get coronavirus, then that will be worse than someone that's like fit and healthy. It's just like, honestly, it's just a weird world we're living in at the moment, and we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, but still a long way to go, I feel. But touching on, you were saying your family, your friends, are they very supportive for you?
Yeah, I think it's not to bash them in any way. My friends have been really supportive. But what I found I really struggled with is that once you're shielding, or when you do become kind of introverted, I'm a very extroverted person, you can hear, because I could talk for Scotland, but I go very within myself if something's wrong. So like when I was sick, all I had to talk about and all I had to add to the conversation was about how sick I was. And I wasn't going out. So when they were going to the pub, I was still shielding. And even my shielding ended. Now much better, because I have my vaccine, and that's kind of like a kind of security blanket, like you feel a bit more confident. But before that, it was still very much like, well, it's your shielding's ended because people have to go back to work and we've got to kickstart the economy. But actually, if you catch it, you'll still die. Like, so you're constantly being bombarded with this information, like there's these new variants and this new variant. And for someone that has anxiety, to have all of that constant information, and these people have died, this many people have died today, this many people have the virus, and your condition is actually, you'll probably 100% die if you get it. Like, it's just constant. And as soon as you hear someone coughing, like, I would be freaking right out, and I wouldn't want to be near anyone. So my friends knew that, and they stopped inviting me to places, which, I mean, people are only human. It's not, I don't resent them for it in any way. Like, I think if I was constantly being told by my friend, no, I'm not coming out because I'm scared I'm going to die, I'd probably just stop speaking to them anyway, you know, like. But I found that was the main thing, is that people didn't really support me when I became disabled. So when I say disabled, some people don't like to use the word disabled. Some people just like to say they have an illness. But I'm very much disabled. Like, I can't walk properly. I have to use a stick, and I still get embarrassed using my stick. It's still a relatively new thing, so I don't really like the attention it gets. And you get that whole look, you get like a sympathy look, like, oh, she's young, she's sick, like, and that's the way everyone kind of treated me, like rather than just asking me how I was and treating me like a person. I think that made my mental health kind of suffer a little bit as well. And obviously people have their own issues to deal with. I know like my friends really struggled. One of my friends lives on her own and she really, really struggled during the pandemic. And one of my other best friends, her dad was in a coma for a long time. He was the only person in his ward to survive at the very start of the pandemic. He was the only person to survive. And she obviously was dealing with that, and everyone has their own issues, but I took it quite personally that no one was messaging me, no one was asking how I was. And I went from being like the life and soul of the party, as I was very often described, to not talking to anyone and not being invited anywhere. And like with my family, they were scared to ask me to do things because even when things opened up, I was like, no, I don't want to do it. And at Christmas time, I didn't want to see anyone that hadn't isolated. And so I've isolated myself in that way by kind of putting up barriers and like setting boundaries that maybe didn't need to be there. But now things are changing and things are looking a bit more positive. I feel as if the relationships are kind of getting back on track. But for a long time, like a fair few months, I really struggled and I thought I wasn't going to have like a group of friends. And there was a very finite amount of people that really understood what was going on.
And that's the impact as well. Like, obviously, you think like when your friends aren't messaging you or anything, you start to have that anxiety and go, have I done something? Do they not want to talk to me again because I'm ill? We try and take a step back and try to think maybe people don't know how to react to this that haven't been through what you've been through. Because I know personally myself, like, I've got a great support network around me, like my friends, family. Like going back to my stories, all the stories are different, so they are in that certain way. They're all, obviously we suffer from the same mental illness, but like we all have different stories regarding it. Like
it's always completely different,
because we were touching earlier on, like I was self-harming as well, and I felt as if it was a release, and I wasn't getting anxious doing it. I just felt good after doing it, which no one should ever feel good after harming themselves. And that's we're trying to in this channel like raise that awareness to not let people get to that point. We just want to take like a step back before we think of anything rash, because that happened when I was like self-harming as well. That was 3 years ago now. 3 years ago this month actually. I was self-harming, and then about at the end of the month it was my cousin, it was his birthday, and we had a barbecue and like having a great time, but no one really, it was only like my mum and my dad that knew what was going through, my sister and my brother, but none of the like family really. My cousin's like my brother to me. I've got a big brother, but his support, like
you're really close.
Yeah, it's like a second brother you've got. So like, he knew about it at the same time, and like that night I came home from the barbecue and I just took a bunch of paracetamol, my medication, and as you say, you think you basically, I went to that family party that day. It was similar to you. Also, you had the big billboards around your garden and that, and
so embarrassing when I say it.
Yeah. And like that was I was like, this last time I'm going to see my family, but I was out playing football, so I was with uncle, it was his partner's son, like he was quite young at the time, playing football with him, and I'm this was the last time I'm doing these things. And then I was writing Bo's suicide note as well on, like it was actually 3 months ago that it was all, I put it all over Twitter. And I don't want people to get to that point. Like I had like 10,000 likes, retweets and notifications on Twitter, and I just don't want people getting to that point. I want people to try and tackle it before it gets to that point where you want to end your own life, because I went down to a pier in Helensburgh, I was standing on the pier, the edge of the pier. I wrote my suicide note on Instagram, Twitter, and standing on the edge of the pier. I'm on Snapchat, but I don't really use it as much. I didn't use it at that time, but do you know how the Snapchat you've got your like, location surfaces?
Yeah.
Like mine's was on at the time, and I don't know how it's also picked me up. But like I believe in God, so I do. Like I'm a faithful person, I'd say. But like I'd say that was fate, like to know like my time's not up yet, I can get through this. It's like basically today's a dark day, but tomorrow, like for every dark what's that saying? Is it through every dark night there's a brighter day? And I think when that Helensburgh incident happened, that made me realise I can get through this, and I want to help other people as well because they've helped me. I want to help them through their battles as well. So, as I say, that's the aim of this channel, and you've been through quite a lot. So, how have you recovered from? Obviously, you're still suffering with the disability, and how do you deal with that every day? Do you know when the trigger does that? As you say, that had an impact on your mental health, like your physical, like your disability, and every disability is not visible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's important to note with mine as well, a lot of people don't really understand fibromyalgia or these like chronic illnesses that are kind of based off trauma. So my fibromyalgia is directly affected by my mental health. So right now I'm in quite a good mental health place. Like I'm feeling okay. I'm doing a little bit better. And I honestly, as much as I really didn't think it would be, I was one of those people that was like, keep us in lockdown, we can't go out, like no travel, close the borders, we're not doing anything. And actually, like, I've come with tail between our legs, because I was like, going to the pub and being able to see people has really helped. So like I was very much not like, if you asked me a couple of months ago, I was like, no, keep us in lockdown until it's all gone. But I honestly think that I didn't realise how much I needed that and needed the social interaction, because I'm a very social being. But my fibro pain, if people don't really understand what fibromyalgia pain is essentially, it's honestly like the worst pain you could experience. It's absolutely horrendous. And my symptoms came quite gradually and then all at once. So there'll be days with my fibro pain that I will be lying on the floor screaming, and like my boyfriend will have to help me in and out the bath. He'll have to help me get dressed, and bless him, honestly, he is literally the best person in the whole world for doing that. He is, props to him, because I'll keep him awake. He says even sometimes like I'll scream in the middle of the night if I roll the wrong way and I hurt myself. And I think it's been really hard for him to watch me just disintegrate basically into like someone that was a total shell of who they were, and now obviously I'm getting that back. But it's totally related to stress and emotional kind of triggers. So for example, we have been having family arguments and things, and that has really brought on a lot of pain for me. So even when I think it doesn't affect me, and I'm not bothered about it, I'm kind of like level-headed, I'll then be really sore like the next day. And I'll need my stick more, and I won't be able to get out of bed. And I think now, it's obviously no one wants to be in chronic pain, no one wants to be in pain all the time. Like just now speaking to you, I could tell you exactly where I'm in pain. I'm in pain from here to my toes, like constant. So I've now just kind of learned to deal with it. And I think having that physical reminder of that's upset you, don't get so stressed about that, don't worry about that, we need to sort this problem, or you can't keep internalizing this, and having that physical reminder of the pain is easier to deal with my mental health issues. Absolutely, I would like to not have pain. I would like to not be in chronic pain, but I think it's helped me address like my mental health problems a little bit more, because it does have that direct impact. And it's really hard not to be resentful and bitter, because I know that someone's actions and a family member's actions have directly caused me, and I've been through counselling and things for it. It's that action that's caused me to be unwell. But I think I've always been a very resilient person. I've been described as being very resilient. Sometimes it's tiring being so resilient and constantly having something positive to say. But I find that when the pain's really bad, as you said, like it's bad for that day. And then, it might be bad tomorrow, but something good's going to happen. So since I started practicing gratitude, and I'm not like talking about crystal mumbo jumbo, it's not that. I literally just find 5 things every day that I'm thankful for. And in the worst of days, and I promise anyone that's listening to this, in the worst of days, you can find 5 things to be grateful for. I promise you can. I said this to my mum. She was going through a really, really horrible breakup. And she said, I can't. She was like crying, I can't find 5 things. I said, you can. what are you grateful for that's happened today? Mine are always, I now can find a list of like 20, 30 things to say thank you for. I'm really grateful that today I am able to speak to you. I'm really grateful that I've had a lovely dinner. I've managed to enjoy the food I eat. I'm really grateful to have medication that helps me be kind of a little bit less in pain. I'm grateful for everyone that I love. I'm grateful for my nice cozy bed at night. I'm grateful to have like a fan with air conditioning just now because it's roasting. Like, it's just, there's always something. I'm always grateful to have a roof over my head, and I'm grateful to be able to have hot water that I can go in a bath and sit and think, and like that has made the biggest difference, I think, is trying to, instead of being bitter about it, I can always be bitter about becoming ill. And there's always this like, why me? Why has this happened to me? What have I done in my life to deserve this? And I'm not saying I don't think that. Like, there's nights that I'm up at 2 a.m. screaming in pain and saying, why has this happened to me? And as you said, like, as a religious person, I'm also religious. And for the longest time, I was like, but why would God do this to me? Like, whether you're religious or not, like, no one deserves to be in pain at all. But the things that that's brought me is appreciation for small things, like having hot water, like being able to enjoy music. Like, so that's definitely a positive that I take from it. And it is about your mindset and switching it from being, I hate this, so cheesy, but why me to try me? So like, I could sit and be a victim about it, or I could speak to you about it, and maybe someone in the same situation won't go through as long and a horrible as journey as what I did to figure that out for themselves.
Yeah, no, definitely. And like, through, as we're talking about, like, through every dark night, there's a brighter day ahead. That you've been, honestly, like, what you've went through, and you're here today, like, your family must be proud of you. Like, just for you sharing this story, and your friends will be sitting going, wow, like, we didn't know like half of the stuff, but now we do. And they might learn a lot from this video from you, also what you went through. And what I'd like to touch on is, if people feel as if they can't talk at all, we've got Ali here that's feel as if that people can relate to you. So they can, like, people, and as you say, in your same condition, they can relate. They might go now, like, I know how to deal with this. And as you see, we're talking about also the condition had like the mental health impact. Do you know when, like, see if you're feeling in pain physically and you start to feel down mentally, do you know how to tackle that right away if you get a better understanding of it?
I feel as if, as someone that's chronically ill, I definitely have a better understanding of my body as a whole. So I think that's a plus point that I would take from, no one wants to be chronically ill. I don't want to be chronically ill. If there was a magic cure and I could snap my fingers, I would absolutely do it. But I work with what I have, and it's definitely allowed me to be more in tune to everything about my body, so much so that, like, even I've had other health trauma very recently, and I ended up like I was took really ill, and I almost had a stroke and all of that. So I think being able to recognise something like that in myself, like, I recognised something was really, really wrong, and I went to the doctor and I came off the medication I was on without permission from my doctor. I said, there's something really bad happened, and when they checked my levels, and I almost had a stroke. So, like, it makes you very, very in tune with everything that's going on in your body. So that obviously it correlates mentally as well. And I know that if I don't deal with my issue, like if I'm stressed today, for example, like not today, but if I was stressed today at work, or something really upset me, or I felt really anxious, there was quite often when the restrictions change, I get really anxious, and I'm sure loads of people do. Or as soon as I see there's an announcement, I'm like, oh no, we're going back into lockdown, or we're coming out, or whatever. And I get that horrible, like gut-wrenching feeling. And I know that when I feel that gut-wrenching feeling, if I don't sort it out, if I don't start like trying to analyse the situation, kind of address how I'm feeling as well, rather than just thinking, it will have a knock-on effect and I'll be in pain. So it kind of forces me to deal with those issues, and vice versa. Like, if I'm in pain, I'm like, well, there's obviously something I've not sorted here. And that, as much as obviously you don't want to be in a situation you're forced to have to deal with either mental pain, physical pain, or whatever, it's makes me more aware that I have to address the things that are going on rather than bottle them up. And as I said, like I've always been a bit of an open book. If people ever ask me, I'll probably tell them anyway. But I was always told that a problem shared is a problem halved, and being able to share the burden of something, regardless of how stupid you think it is, there's always someone that can relate. And I think as well, like especially with mental health, it's 1 in 4 people. Like it's not like a massive amount of people and like all of them are mentally well, and then there's a couple of people with mental illness. It's 1 in 4 people, and that's people that are struggling with something that is, I mean, mental health kind of is a lifelong condition. Like it's not just one day you wake up and you're cured. Yeah, like it's something you have to work on, and you have to find what works for you. So for me, medication doesn't work for me. It just doesn't. It made me worse. And that's not to say that medication doesn't work for other people. I know plenty of people that it works really well for. CBT didn't work for me, and that's like the main therapy that's offered on the NHS. I done person-centric therapy, and that helped. But again, those issues crept back up again as soon as I took ill. So you have to find what works for you, and even if that's just sharing with someone, it doesn't have to be a counsellor. Places like Samaritans are amazing. The people at Samaritans are obviously they're trained volunteers, but they are just people. It's not counsellors. It's not someone that's going to psychoanalyze you. It's just someone to listen. And I think being able to be that person and just holding space for someone makes a massive difference as well, just to make someone feel heard, because that in the pandemic has really been my biggest issue, is that I've not felt heard and I've not felt able to share, and that's kind of why I took it all on myself as well.
Definitely, and I'm glad you touched on that there, because what I was thinking, I've been thinking about this whole lockdown, it's affected people's mental health. I feel as if the lack of funding for it is, it has to be addressed, and it has to be addressed as soon as possible, because the longer we're in like this, I know things are easing, but the longer this goes on, this pandemic and then out of lockdown, the more deaths that will be caused by mental health instead of COVID. I'm not saying COVID's not real. COVID is a real thing. It's impacted
absolutely. It's never been about that though. It's never been about it's COVID and COVID's not real. Like I'm pretty sure I've had COVID. I know people that died from COVID, unfortunately, and I know people that's lives have been changed, like mine, from catching it. I know people that have recovered totally fine from COVID, and I know people that haven't caught it. So, like, regardless of the actual COVID-19 virus, your mental health is so important. And I think my story goes to show that if your mental health isn't in check, it can affect your physical health, and it has done. So it needs to be addressed. And also what you're saying about funding, I was put on a waiting list for CBT therapy, right? So your standard cognitive behavioural therapy, talk therapy, and that was the NHS waiting list. I was put on that in May last year, and I've not heard back. And at that point I said I was suicidal. It was an urgent referral. Like, I'm very, very lucky to have support and be able to have worked through it, and also, to be honest with you, to have money to work through it. Like, I'm very, very privileged to be in a position that I can pay for my own care, but people can't, and that's why we're losing lives. And it's that's the people that go to the doctor and say they're struggling. I was made to feel so stupid and small when I said that I felt like mentally ill, and I'm obviously talking to you about it. When I phoned the doctor, I was like, and I think that I might have depression again. And like, I didn't want to talk about it because I felt so embarrassed that they were asking me, and why do you think you've got depression? And I was like, well, I want to kill myself. And like, you're made to feel stupid about it. And that's not a new thing. It's been about for a long time. But I think, as much as everyone's aware of mental health and we all be kind and all of that, see when the people near you need help. Like, for example, I reached out to my friends, and they have, but at the time they were dealing with their own issues, and I was made to feel isolated. I went to the doctor, I felt isolated again. Like, the people around you might not ask for help, so it's also your job as a friend and a family member to look out for it as well.
Definitely.
that's something that people are aware of mental health issues, they're aware of the 1 in 4 statistic, they're aware of all of this. It's not always about awareness, it's about the awareness of how to help rather than what mental health problems look like, because they don't look like anything. Like they look like you're speaking to me and me speaking to you. It looks like anything, it just looks like a conversation.
It does, doesn't it? And that's the issue, you can't see it, because like I get taken to hospital with it 3 years ago and I just get discharged the next day from it. So I had overdose, discharged, they said, oh, we'll get you on counselling. Had counselling for 2 weeks and that was it. Basically, I felt good one day and I just get discharged. And then it doesn't matter if I've improved slightly or not. You still need that. See, even if your mood's improved and how your feelings improved, you still need that guidance towards it. You can't just, as soon as you have a good day, you can't just go like that.
Yeah.
And it's like having a good day. I don't know, like what prime example, football players, they have a good game, they just don't go like that. I've had a good game, that's me, I'm fine now. I don't know, like, do you know what I mean? It's just, it's weird, like things like that. And the thing is where I get discharged the next day, and then a few months ago when I tried to take my own life for the second time, like the police got me and I went to the police station and I was on the phone because it's a lot of like phone consultations just now for mental health, and I said I don't feel safe tonight, even being in the house with my mum and her partner at the time, her husband, sorry, and they said, I just go home and make sure you don't do anything daft. Basically, it's as if you're phoning them and they're going, why are you phoning us? But like, I'm phoning you because I nearly took my own life 2 years ago.
I think people don't understand it as well unless you're in that situation. Like people say, oh, just it's that whole like, oh, don't be sad, like you're a young girl, like it's totally fine, you'll get better. I'm not getting better from this disability. I'm going to work at it. I'm not going to get better. It comes in flare-ups, that's different. It's not going to be cured. So I think like people do the same thing with mental health and they're like, it's just a bad day, like you'll be okay, don't be daft, like that whole don't do anything stupid. But when you feel so low and you feel like depressed and you feel suicidal and you have these thoughts, it's not you that's thinking. Like I think people don't really understand that, and that's where that whole suicide's selfish, and that was what I was told when I said I was suicidal. I was told that was selfish, and why would you leave your family, and why this is you've got a little brother and a little sister and they look up to you, and it's pressure put on someone, like, and like unless you feel suicidal, and I really hope people don't, right? I do not wish on anyone, never ever, and unless you felt that, you don't understand it. It's not Ali that's feeling suicidal. It's like a shell of you, and it's not you that's like being don't do something daft. It's because it's you wouldn't do it. It's your illness, and it's separate. So when people are suicidal or they are feeling so low that they want to harm themselves, it's not that person that you know. It's like it's what the illness is doing to them. So I think that's the part that people don't really understand unless they've been through it.
I think people worry just now as well, Ali. We were talking about people earlier on, as you say, like a problem shares, a problem half. One of my best friends, he told me after, obviously a few months ago, he's like, I'd rather listen to your problems than attend your own funeral. And when they said that, that was kind of like, it was quite powerful, but I was like, that's pretty inspiring me. That's kind of lifting me, and it's gave me an inspiration to come on this platform today and try and help other people sharing their problems. Like she's like, I'd rather people share their problems than feeling isolated. And also touching on, we're talking about like the lack of funding as well. I was reading a story not long ago that quite some of ourselves, like went in and rushed into hospital and like, right, we'll put you on counselling, discharged, let the man walk out himself. An hour later he's dead, committed suicide, thrown from a train. Like that's something needs done about that and deal with it better, definitely. And that's the whole aim of what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to promote this as much as I can. I'm not calling out like see the NHS, everything. What a job!
It's never about that. It's never. I think people get their back up when you say that. Like I've been through a lot of medical trauma, and it's not on the NHS. Like the NHS is amazing, and I'm so thankful to have it because I would never be able to afford the treatment that I have. Like, but it's not treated the same as an illness. Like, it's not treated like if you, for example, you broke your leg, right? This is one that people use all the time. See, if you broke your leg, people wouldn't be like, oh, we'll just walk on it.
Exactly.
Like, no, it's broken. Like, your brain is not working properly. And people with mental illness as well, it's measurable. Like, you can literally go on to a brain scan and see that people are lacking in these like things that make their brain work. So you can see that their levels have dropped so much, like with serotonin and stuff like that, that's why they're depressed. It's not an illness. It's not just you're deciding to be depressed or you're not thinking positively or all these other things that people tell you. It's just not treated the same as what an other illness is, like a physical illness.
Yep, and that's the thing as well, Ali. Like, one of the followers of the page last night I was talking to, that he's getting a new job now, and but his old job he got made redundant from it, and he basically said, "Oh, we've let you go," but he was like suffering bad depression. He was off work for a time. It was quite similar to myself as well. Like, he took time off work and then basically pestering him when you're coming back. Like, and then he told his boss at the time he needed time off and all that. What's wrong with me? So I'm not feeling in the right frame of mind, and they're just like that. You're alright, can you like do your job? And he's like, aye, but he's like, but because they can't see it. This is where I go back to employers, just as teachers. Obviously, there's a lot of teachers now getting like the training, the first aid courses, and like a lot of employers, but like my current employers, like they're brilliant. They've been supporting me all the way throughout it. But my previous employers, like I don't think they had like the knowledge of, the understanding of mental health, and that's what needs done. And I'm just trying to promote it to like obviously yourself. And if you dealt with any like mental health charities over like recent times?
Yeah, so just now in my work, I'm very, very lucky to be able to work with Samaritans. And I think that obviously I can't really talk too much about it because it's through another brand, but it has been absolutely incredible to hear people's stories. And I think, like, obviously, as you said, individual stories are different, but everyone's got a mental health story. And I just think it's absolutely mad that people are like, everyone's got a story about that, right? So you've obviously got your own, as horrible it is to hear your story, like there's so many people like you and like me that have these stories. There's so many people that aren't lucky enough to be able to be here to tell them. And everyone that I know, and I imagine everyone that you know and anyone that's watching this will have a story, whether it's about them or someone else, that no. And they can kind of tell, like, oh, I know someone that's been suicidal, or I know someone that's struggled really badly with depression or anxiety or whatever it is. So it's not an uncommon thing. But it baffles me that people don't know how to deal with it and don't know how to respond. So yeah, I think it's been really nice to be able to work with Samaritans and kind of see like how they listen, and it's definitely made me a better listener. It's all about how you hold space for someone. You're not giving advice. Like I'm not qualified to give advice on mental health. I'm not trained. I'm not qualified to. Do you know what I mean? Like, we're not trained to give advice on mental health. We're just sharing our experiences. In the same way. Yeah, the same way as I said, like, medication doesn't work for me. That does not mean that someone watching this should stop their medication if it works for them. Like, it's about coming to the kind of conclusion yourself. That's what Samaritans are for. They're for listening, not advice. And I think also a lot of people kind of assume, like with these charities, like the text service Shout as well, that you have to be suicidal to use them. It's not. Like, the aim is to not have any suicidal people. So if you feel that you are like in need to talk to someone, you don't have someone there to talk to, or you're not comfortable doing it, then text one of these like charities, like speak to someone you don't know. And sometimes that can make a big difference, just to have someone to hold space and listen to you rather than like advise you as well, because it's so different. The brain's a really interesting thing. It's completely different for every single person. So my advice is not going to work for every single person. It maybe won't even work for another one person. So I think that's important to note as well with mental illness.
And as you say, like, the biggest battle you face every day is with your mind, like, because your mind controls you to do everything. So it does, and that's what we're just looking to do, and just try and raise that awareness. But As I say, thanks very much for sharing your story tonight. I appreciate it very much. Showing what I can do is we're talking about the numbers for like Samaritans. I've got that on my Instagram page, so do it. Every Mind Matters ND, and my YouTube channel is in the bio, which this will be going on in the near future. But I do hope things are looking up for you, and I hope the support from your family's still there. And if you ever feel as if you need anyone to talk to, drop a message on the page, or anyone watching this just now that is a similar experience to Ali. If you want to even pop Ali a wee DM and ask for advice for her, I'm sure you'll be able to give better advice than me on your physical health. But I'm glad you're here and you're looking well, and I appreciate you coming on. Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Anyone that's listening to this and needs the number out loud, the Samaritans number is 116123, and it's 24-hour service. So you can call, you can send an email. I believe there's a live chat function as well that they're developing. But all these charities, like the majority of them are late nights or 24-hour service. So if I don't answer a message, or if Mikey doesn't answer a message, like, message anyone. As he said, like, we would rather listen to your problems. I would rather listen to a stranger's problems than ever find out that someone had killed themselves. Like, I would literally sit up all hours of the day to just read people's messages than to ever hear about another suicide. So your people are often kind of, it's only ever you that thinks you're a burden. I think that's really important to remember as well. Like, I've had loads of messages regarding my health and things that I've shared online and my epilepsy diagnosis, and people have shared their thoughts on it and how they're maybe going through something similar or whatever. But as we said, it's just send us a message. See, even if you don't want to start it with, like, I'm struggling with my mental health, you just want to have a chat to someone, like, we're here. And the people that follow the page and like are following this channel, do you know that they all have the same mindset? So it's a massive community worth of people. It's not just us.
Yep, and Every Mind, that's the name of the channel, Every Mind Matters, because it doesn't matter if you're male, female, at all, different ethnic backgrounds, different race, religion, we've all got the same battles each day, battling mental health, and that's the aim. Sadly, suicide's sadly never going to stop in society, but what our aim is to do is try and get these statistics low, try and get them to zero. It'd be brilliant if suicide you never heard this story about it again, but that's why I'm just trying to raise this awareness for this channel, to try and get these numbers to really low, because we're hearing just now, I think we spoke about like statistics, there's about 10,000 calls per day going to helpline services, and it's all because of most of it is because of the pandemic. People.
Massive numbers, like 1 in 3 almost of people, they actually have found that their mental health's got worse over lockdown, and obviously there's 1 in 4 people struggle with it anyway, so that's a massive amount of people. So you're absolutely not alone in it, and I think that's something that people say all the time, you're not alone, etc., but you're really not. There are so many people, and if you feel as if you've got no one, you've always got someone to listen to you. Like, there's always, like, I'm always there to listen. There's always someone. So I think that's always really, really important, and what I would like to remind people as well.
Definitely, Ali, and thanks very much again for coming on to the channel. It's been great hearing your story, and I'm glad as I say again, glad you're able to tell it. But thanks everyone for listening. I hope Ali's story has inspired people that maybe that are in her position as well to come forward and try and share their experience and raise that awareness.
Thank you so much for having me, and best of luck. I can't wait to see who else is on and hear all the other stories as well.
So I hope you all enjoyed the first interview of The Mind Matters with myself, Mikey Doak, and Ali Carson. Thanks very much for being the first guest on it. I appreciate you sharing your story, and thanks again. Hopefully you have a long, good recovery ahead, and you can get to the pub as soon as you can.
Fingers crossed.
Thanks very much, Ali, for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Cheers. I'll just stop the recording now.